Welcome everyone to the Sister Stories podcast. This podcast is aimed at marveling at God's sovereignty in each of our lives as women and at encouraging one another via our stories. My name is Sophie, and today I am joined by Jackie.
Hi, Sophie.
Hi, Jackie. Welcome.
Thank you.
So first of all, can you tell us who you are?
Sure. I am Jackie. I am married to Paul. Like Anne, I am heading towards the big 6-0 next year. We have 3 grown-up children. Ben, who's in Nottingham, Jess, who's here at Cornerstone, and then Steph, who got married last month and is now living in Wimbledon, which is lovely. We've been at Cornerstone since the very beginning, actually. We were part of the team that planted the church, which has been a massive joy and a privilege to watch how it's grown over the years. And I work part-time at the Good Book Company, which is a local publishing company. I am publishing coordinator, which involves a lot of post-it notes, basically.
We all love post-it
Yes!
notes. That's great. So we're going to be talking about, obviously, your journey to faith and to knowing the Lord Jesus Christ. But can you tell us about your family background, how you were brought up, what that was like?
Sure. So I was brought up in a Christian home, which is fabulous. My parents were both converted through Billy Graham, actually, at one of the big Billy Graham missions, I think in London in the 50s. And we lived in a pretty little village in Essex and attended the local church there. And it was a fairly lively church community. It was a standard Anglican village church. So church was very much a part of growing up. I went to Sunday school, so I knew a lot about the Bible, I guess. But it was about 11, really, when I signed up for confirmation classes that I first realised that I didn't really feel any of it. Confirmation was something that you just did, so I did the classes. But I was very much aware that God was real, and I believed it all wholeheartedly, but there was kind of a sense that I didn't really understand it properly. And I remember walking up the aisle at my confirmation thinking, this really should mean more to me than it does. So there was an awareness, I think, that I hadn't really personally connected with God at that point. And then when I was about 13, there was a holiday club at church, and one of the leaders was a delightful woman called Gwyneth, and she was one of those lovely people who just kind of glowed in her knowledge of God, and she really loved Jesus. And that really challenged me, because I suddenly realised that this wasn't just a belief system that she signed up to, but it was a personal relationship, and I became very aware that wasn't what I was enjoying. That as I looked at her, there was a tangible sense that she was enjoying her relationship with God. She was gloriously sort of unself-conscious. One of the weird things I remember is that on one of the days she had a huge ladder in her tights. And as a self-conscious 13-year-old, I was thinking, how can she not be worried about this? How can this not be an issue for her? But she just was so full of the love of Christ that she just carried on regardless. And that was just one of those small things that made me think, what I have is not really real. And I remember going home one evening and just praying to the Lord that a sort of, I want what she's got kind of prayer, you know? I just want to hand it all over. And so I think that was the beginning of my journey. But then I think it took many years after that of reading and praying and hanging out with Christians, and the teaching at the church wasn't great at that stage, but there was quite a lot of going on around the youth group that involved going to events where there was really good teaching. So I think my faith was growing gradually over the years, and so by the time I got to university, which is where Paul and I met, I was kind of all in then, and joined the Christian Union straight away, joined a really good Bible teaching church, met lots of people who were really walking the walk, who'd been Christians for many years. And so that was a hugely fruitful time. So that is my journey.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's really nice to see that the witness of that lady, Gwyneth, was like a good example in your life and a model.
Yes.
Yes,
I think it's a huge encouragement to our evangelism, and our just the way we live our lives can be a real testimony to our faith. Even if we're not managing to put that into words with people, it can still play a part in somebody's journey towards knowing who Jesus is. So, yeah.
So, you've talked about how her example pushed you towards Christ, really, towards wanting to really know him and commit to him personally. Is there maybe a specific time or specific event that really sealed that in your heart, or not specifically?
No, I don't think there was a specific time, actually. I think it was a general growing. I think reading had a lot to do with it. I think I was quite a voracious reader. I remember reading Rebecca Manley-Pippett's Out of the Salt Shaker, which is a seminal text.
I proofread the translation of that book.
Oh, did you?
Yes, completely out of the blue, sorry.
Yeah. So, and I remember reading something she said in that book about that she used to say to non-Christians, just open up the Bible and start reading, put it into practice and see what God does. Yeah. Just watch what God does. And I remember, even as a baby Christian, I remember thinking, wow, that's fantastic. It's so simple. I can do that. Yes. I can just take the Bible seriously and believe that it's true and put it into practice. And so, and there have been lots of books like that over the years that have been really important. And then I think people were important in the journey as well. Lots of wonderful Christians that I met at university, as I said. And then, I did an apprenticeship later on at Dundonald, actually, working with women there, and did a lot of studying and had a mentor. And she was wonderful. It's funny, people play a big part, don't they? I watched how she conducted herself in family life. I watched how her Bible was always open, how she was a wonderful prayer, how she loved people sacrificially. And yes, I think it's people like that who have had a real impact as well. So it's a combination, I guess, of the truth lived out.
Yeah, and that's that's the beauty of the church, isn't it?
Yeah,
coming together and actually sharing life, not just seeing each other just a little bit, but actually sharing our lives together and seeing how people live out their lives is making a huge difference, isn't it? Yeah,
and seeing God's faithfulness to them through difficult times. When you watch somebody who's going through exquisitely difficult situations, watching them cling on to the Lord and hold fast to the truths that they know to be true, even if they're struggling to grasp them in real life. That's a massive witness, and it gives you so much confidence in who God is, and
it does.
It helps you to cling on yourself.
Certainly, yeah. So you mentioned that you met Paul at university.
Yes.
What happened there?
So our eyes met across a crowded CU, basically. Yeah, so I met him on the first night that I went to the Christian Union, actually. He and his flatmate Paul invited a bunch of us newbies, first years, because I was a year behind him, invited us to their flat. So me and my friend Kate, who I'd gone to see you with that first night, we went over to Paul and Paul's. There were two Pauls. So that was the first time. That was the first time I met him. Yeah, and we started going out together a while after that, actually. Yeah. So.
And as we said with Anne, the rest is history.
The rest is history. Indeed.
So where did you go at university, actually?
Exeter.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah, it was a fabulous place to go. Loved it so much. It's got the moors, it's got the sea, it's a beautiful city. It's a lovely campus, university. Yeah, it was great. Had a wonderful time there, yeah.
And so what brought you to Kingston in the end? Because we've moved around a little bit.
Yes, so Paul moved back when he finished a year ahead of me. He moved back to London with his parents in Southfields. I then moved back to my parents, did a bit of studying the following year because I wanted to join the BBC, and in order to do that, I'd worked out that I needed a secretarial qualification. So I went from a law degree to a secretarial course.
Wow.
and I did end up working at the BBC amazingly that's a whole nother story, which you may or may not be interested in. And so we needed to live either near where Paul worked in Wimbledon or where I worked in Shepherd's Bush at Television Centre. And so we ended up in Wimbledon because it was a much nicer place to live, basically, than Shepherd's Bush. That's what brought us to London. And then we started going to Emmanuel Church and then planted into Dundonald and then planted from Dundonald into Kingston.
Wow. So,
yeah.
Yeah, so from church to church.
Yeah, lots of church planting, which is fantastic, actually. I think being involved in a church plant is massively encouraging because you're so dependent on the Lord in those times when you're planting a church. There's just a few of you. You feel really vulnerable. You've left behind a lot of your friends and your sort of church security blanket. And you're waiting to see what the Lord will do. And you're building really strong friendships in that context. So it's an exciting thing to do. So if anybody has the opportunity, go for it.
Great. Yeah, lovely. Anyone listening?
I'm now telling people to leave the church. That's not good, is it?
No. Well,
church planting's a good thing.
Exactly. It's necessary at times, yeah.
Yeah.
So from your years as a Christian, I'm sure you've learnt many lessons and everything. But
yes.
Obviously we've had probably, quite challenging, a quite challenging couple of years. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've learnt in that time? And I think you've had quite a few.
I have learnt so much, and it's been super helpful to sit down and think about it, actually, before doing this, because I don't think I had really thought through. But as I did, I couldn't stop scribbling things down, actually. So it was great. So I've had to narrow it down a bit, really. So, so I think... first of all, I should say that I should put it into context in that Paul and I were at the stage where our children weren't at home. So 2 of them were married. Steph was at university. So we didn't have the whole small children, homeschooling, that awful challenge that was ahead of all parents of small children. So, and after the initial 6 weeks, Paul went back to school. So he was working normally. I was working out of the kitchen at home, but working normal working hours. And so, so we didn't have a lot of the challenges that other people did. But that said, there were many challenges, and I learnt so much, actually. So the first thing I would say I learnt was that Jesus is utterly consistent and unchanging and faithful, and that he is enough. When everything that we felt was normal was thrown up in the air, and our plans were scuppered, and the things that we normally rely on are stripped away from us, that even in amongst all that, God does not change. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He is sufficient. And even he's working wonderfully in the middle of all that to change us and to grow us and for our good. And so I found a real comfort in God's character. And so I found that opening up the Bible in the mornings became a really steadying time, so that whenever those kind of, we're in the middle of a global pandemic, people are dying and it's all gone pear-shaped, when those kind of feelings would bubble up inside, looking to the Word, opening up the Bible and reminding myself of God's character, lifting my eyes away from all that stress and strain and anxiety, became a glorious thing. So reminding myself of God's character, that was something that I learnt. I learnt a lot about prayer. I got into the habit after a while of an early morning walk, and I used that time to pray. I had in the course of work, actually, because it was for a book that is about to be published, actually, I listened to a series of talks by an American pastor called J.D. Greer about prayer. The series was just called Ask, actually. And I found it really, really helpful. He taught me how to kind of riff on the Lord's Prayer, really, to use that structure and to pray around it. And so I would do that every morning. And I found it wonderful to be able to cast all my cares on the Lord and to pray about all those people who are in really difficult situations around me, who I couldn't do anything to help, I couldn't go round there. I couldn't give them a hug. I couldn't, there was a certain amount of, you could sort of cook for people and stuff, but if people are a long way away, you just couldn't get at them. And it was really frustrating. But I found great comfort in praying for them. And there was something really conducive, I think, about going out into nature. Not that New Malden is particularly beautiful, but just being out there in the early morning in the quiet with the birds and the golf course, and there was something conducive about connecting to God, I think, in that sort of context. So that was a wonderful lesson to learn. And just in case it sounds like I'm a bit of a spiritual saint, that has completely gone off the boil in the last month or so because of Paul having COVID and various other things. So, these patterns that you develop sometimes fall by the wayside, but I'm determined, and you can all hold me to account, I'm determined to get back into my early morning walking.
We will do.
Please. And also I think I became very much aware of the Lord's kindness to us in so many different ways, in big ways and in really little ways, which is great. I think often when life is really busy, you're sort of so busy moving from one thing to the next that you don't stop to appreciate how kind the Lord is being to you. So my dad had Alzheimer's, and he deteriorated quite rapidly in lockdown. It wasn't good for him. And it was really hard to watch that. It was hard to watch my mum struggling on, But we are so thankful to the Lord that they had wonderful carers who were such a blessing. I don't know that any of them were Christians, but they were a massive encouragement. People in the village used to drop in and just stand on the doorstep and chat to mum, and that was so comforting for me at a distance, not able to visit them very often. And again, when Dad died, there were so many ways that we saw the Lord's kindness in how that happened, in the fact that it happened on a day when Steph and I'd been over to visit, and he died very peacefully in his sleep, and there were just lots of things around the way that happened that demonstrated that the Lord was watching over us and walking with us through the pain and the suffering.
It's really, I always find it amazing. These, as you say, these little things that maybe day by day we might not even see clearly sometimes, but then, I don't know, sometimes in the morning you pray for something just really small, like I pray for just students to turn up to the CU in school. Yeah. And just seeing like just one new student coming. Yeah. Or something really small like that. I don't know, it's just really precious, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's in the small things and in the big things that he does that.
Yeah. And sort of outside of the church as well, the way he... So one of the other really encouraging things was we were having an extension built, as you know, designed by your wonderful husband. And the Lord gave us these lovely builders who were such an encouragement. They're not Christians. They're lovely family guys. But the Lord used them to bring so much comfort to me, because whenever I came back from visiting my dad, and those visits were always really painful, and driving away from there was really painful. I used to cry most of the way from the A12 to the M25. But I knew that when I got back, I could make a cup of tea, go round the back, and the builders would down tools and have a chat and just cheer me up, And that was such a kindness of the Lord. And they were like brothers, really. And that was just one of those funny things where I thought, well, the Lord just knew that I was, that at a time when I couldn't spend time with family and friends and church members, that actually these builders could be an encouragement, and they were.
Exactly,
So, it's amazing. And I was so thankful for church family. I've got to say, I know other people have commented about this, and it was wonderful how the leadership organised all kinds of stuff to keep us connected with all kinds of craziness.
You did well in the home group challenges, didn't you?
We had so much fun in the home group challenges. I will never forget the lovely Marsha standing in our garden directing shaving foam at Anna Lane, and chucking jugs of water over her and all this kind of madness. It was just wonderful, and I think actually, in fact, that was quite a witness to the builders, because I think they could not believe the nonsense that we got up to, but also the support network that was there for us. I think it really challenged their perceptions of what church is. So, so lots of ways in which the Lord's kindness was just evident day by day, and I think we noticed it more because the situation was so tricky. And then I guess the last thing is that I was really freshly reminded of the hope that we have, because all of a sudden, the hope of an eternity with Jesus, because all of a sudden death was all around us in a way that it had never been before. It was so big in our worldview. I couldn't listen to the news because the numbers were so terrible. Yeah. And but I realised afresh, I knew it, but I think I realised afresh that I don't need to fear death ever because of Jesus, because of what he did. And I didn't need to be upset when normal life was scuppered and my plans weren't working out, because this life isn't everything. For the Christian, the best is yet to come, and so it doesn't matter if stuff goes pear-shaped in this life, and that hope, I don't know how people managed without that hope. And I think that hopelessness that you saw in people is that's a wonderful point at which to come to them with the hope of Jesus, isn't it? That whatever happens in this life, and you won't get people back, and you won't get the time back, but there is an eternity, there is a hope, there is life beyond the grave. It just changes your perception of death completely, which is a glorious thing.
It is, isn't it? And it's so overwhelmingly big, almost, but so beautiful at the same time. Such a precious thing for all of us.
It's just a glorious truth that you can rest in. Changes how you look at life. That is wonderful. So many things.
It is. Yeah, many things. And I'm sure from that and from your journey in general, that you have advice that you could give to younger Christians, or maybe to people in a specific circumstance. I don't know which one you would like.
Yeah. So there were two things really, and mostly around the prayer thing, actually. I think I would say make prayer an absolute priority in your life. And by that, I don't mean necessarily the formal quiet time sort of prayer, although that obviously is a great thing. It's a wonderful thing. But I think aiming to learn to talk to our Father throughout the day, to build up that communication with him, talking to him about anything and everything I think that's a glorious thing, and I'm absolutely preaching to myself, because it's not something that I've cracked, but I've thought about it a lot, and I just think it's life-changing. Those days when I do that feel completely different to the days when I don't. And I remember J.D. Greer saying something about a friend who he had said he never prays for more than 20 minutes, which I found quite encouraging, because sitting down and praying for any length of time is difficult. Yes. But he said I never go for 20 minutes without praying. And I thought, crikey, going for 20 minutes, I can go for hours without praying. And I think that's a real challenge, and I think connecting with the Lord throughout the day will be absolutely life-changing. So that's one of my goals. Yes. And then I think the other thing is prayer triplets. I have been in a prayer triplet for getting on for 30 years now, which is crazy. Wow. And it's been such a blessing to me. I have walked through all kinds of joys and sorrows with my two sisters in Christ. They are so special to me. They know me so well. They hold me to account. They ask me really difficult questions that they didn't ask me, to be honest. They laugh with me. They cry with me. We always have to have a box of tissues handy. And they just encourage me so much. Those friendships are very, very precious. And I just think if you can do that, if you can find a couple of people who you can pray with and be really honest with, I think it can really help your growth, and it can stop you from wandering away from the Lord, because those people will draw you back. They'll keep on encouraging you in the Lord. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I think that's really useful, actually, because seeing the church grow, which is obviously amazing, I think we need these closer relationships to anchor us even more and to hold us to account, as you say.
Yes, I think so, because with the best will in the world, a home group is not necessarily the setting in which you're going to be that honest and open. And so I just think a smaller group is great, really, and it'll help carry you through the times when you're feeling pathetic. And we kind of shore each other up, which is great, and we point each other back to the Lord. And quite often, two out of three of us will be struggling with our quiet times, struggling with reading the Bible, struggling with praying, and but the other one will be okay, and she'll pray up a storm for us, and so and we all go through different things at different times. So it's a great thing. Yeah,
that's really useful. Oh, thank you so much, Jackie, and thank you for sharing your story with us. That's all for this episode of Sister Stories, everyone, but join us again next time.